Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Reed, and it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you all here to Heal Sex Shame. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself just before I introduce Naima. I'll begin by sharing a little bit about me and the work that I've done with Naima. So the work I do is a bit of an ecstatic mix of everything that I'm passionate about, from self-empowerment to creative arts, movement, and digital design. And I'm the founder of the Manifest Summit, which launched this past January. And we will be launching another program in June called 7 Feathers of Life and Leadership. So before I became a wife and a mother, I was a very wild and free, uninhibited, wild child. But over the course of life and, you know, how motherhood and work tends to just consume you. And I sort of got lost in all of the have-tos, and I lost touch with my sovereignties over all of my need tos and all of my want tos. And so when I've been trying to sort of reestablish myself and root into entrepreneurship and figure things out on my own as a self-sustaining businesswoman, I came into some blocks, and Naima was able to really help me get in touch with my source, which was my sex, and really open up into the fullness of who I am as a woman, and really sink in and reroute into who I am as a woman. And since then, life has never been the same. Ultimately, I came to the decision that separation with my longtime partner, my husband, was probably for the best, because our relationship just, you know, there were parts that just probably couldn't be salvaged, and you know, one of them was the sex. And I just don't, you know, I thought, okay, with all of this and the love that I've always had for women, that he's always known as well, just had to come to the forefront. And so, and as soon as I opened up all of that, an amazing friendship that I've had naturally flourished into the most profound love I've ever experienced. And as a result, my career has grown, my business has grown, and I am forever grateful for being able to be honest with myself, brutally honest, even if it meant facing some of my biggest fears. I don't regret it, not a single bit. And I want to thank Naima for being able to start unraveling that knot just a little bit, so that I can untangle and be free. So without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce to you your teacher for today. Naima Singletary is the founder of the Academy for Womanhood, where she and a network of intimacy experts teach people how to cultivate power and connection through sex, touch, and intimacy. After building multiple companies and selling her own fashion marketing company in 2011, Naima was guided by God into the industry of transformation in 2011. Within a year, she published over 100 YouTube videos teaching about courage, power, and deep personal growth, led over a dozen online courses, and worked privately with over 100 students, who now, like me, credit Naima with being a key player in helping us return to our freedom and knowingness of our truth. In 2013, she experienced a profound and dark night after breaking a joy limit she didn't know she had, and then descended and finally tanked into a 7-month dark night of the soul. In this place of bottom, she received the clear, unfiltered voice to bring her journey of healing, sex, shame, and living free to the world. And if you're here because you seriously desire to heal your own sex shame, then you're in the right place with the right woman. I truly believe that, and welcome. I introduce to you Naima Singletary.
Right on. I was looking for the clapping that we were able to use in rehearsal, and I wasn't able to find it. So I'm clapping for you. Can you hear me, darling?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me and see me, right?
I can hear you and see you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Well, Laura, thank you so much for that, darling. And I want to share a little story about how that even happened, because the magic that is present in my life, you know, if you would have talked to me about magic 5 years ago, it would have been like airy-fairy kind of thing, like, yeah, get the fuck out of here, whatever. And now because of, like, I've been in the trenches for the last several years, and it's, I've been burned and, have many times felt like I'm being executed. And but now I know without doubt that magic is real, and that when we do the internal work and set up first the egoic structure so that we don't lose it to the point where we literally kill ourselves, and then just set up the practices that allow us to tap into everything that's already in us that we have a hard time accessing when we're just trapped behind trauma and story and drama.
Mm-hmm.
Then I know now that this magic is real. And so um, I was thinking to myself, okay, someone's going to introduce me for today's Google Hangout. And I had no idea who that person was. Like, nobody just came to mind, right? And I kind of like let the thought go. And then I was like, okay, now it's time to find somebody to introduce me on the Hangout. Who's that person going to be? And I logged onto Facebook. And before I even, could see a face or a name or whatever, Laura instantly came to mind. I said, oh, it's definitely going to be Laura. I hadn't talked to Laura in months. I hadn't seen Laura. I didn't know what was going on in her world. And I said, Laura is the one. And it's like you're able to bring in, this magic allows you to bring in whatever it is that you need, whether it's money, whether it's people, whether it's opportunity, whether it's a circumstance, an order of events to occur. When we start to unravel the bullshit that gets in the way of us really living
Isn't it?
and full, like, this is what happened. So then I call Laura. At first I was going to message her on Facebook, and I'm like, I think I have her number. So I go look at my contacts on my phone. Boom, there it is, Laura Reed. I call Laura. She answers the phone. I'm like, I have this thing going on, and you are going to be the person that introduces me, and God already told me that you're the one. What's your answer? She's like, yes, of course, absolutely. And that's exactly how it happened. So, Laura, thank you so much, darling. I really
You're welcome. My
appreciate you being
pleasure.
here. And so you're welcome to stay, obviously. I know you have to leave at some point, and so I'm going to say my departure and gratitudes to you now. We will connect later. I really appreciate your introduction here. So hello, with my open and full heart right now. I am Naima Singletary, and I will be teaching, facilitating here this afternoon. I'm here at this beautiful restaurant. I just want to drop in. I was getting my nails done about 45 minutes ago, and so there was, a frequency there, and I was there, and then I walked here because the nail salon is like maybe 4 or 5 blocks away. And I'm here now at this beautiful restaurant here in the Wynwood district, which is the art district and design district here in Miami, Florida. And again, magic, like, this is just my life, this whole magic thing. I find this restaurant on Yelp, and I read it. I have a whole process for how I decide what restaurants I'm going to come to. So I come here to this restaurant, and I instantly fall in love. And this is when I knew I was going to have the Google Hangout, but I wasn't sure where and all that because I knew I didn't want to do it at home. And then I was like, I'm doing my Google Hangout at this restaurant. Hadn't even talked to the people in charge, nothing. I was like, I'm doing my Google Hangout at this restaurant. Just like that. So then I talked to the guy in charge. He's like, yeah, sure, I don't see why not. Let me talk to whoever. Boom. The next day I was here, he's like, you can come. I'll totally take care of you. So I'm here at this beautiful restaurant. It's called Morgan's here in Wynwood. If you ever come here, ask for Sean. Tell him Naima sent you. He's a delight. He's great. He's fabulous. He's been with them since they started here 5 years ago. And it's just beautiful here. I feel good here. And I felt like this was a place that I could be relaxed and really connect with you in the way that we're going to be here today. So my clock currently reads 2:10. And we're going to be here for about an hour, okay, give or take, okay? And my goal here today is to share with you as much as I can within a 1 hour time frame, stories from my life, stories from my clients' lives, and things that I have practiced over and over and over again, things that have worked, things that have not worked, and then also get you for me to say something that touches some truth in you. Because this work is always about remembering what we already know, okay? We are the universe. We are what I call walking gods. And what has happened for all of us is that we were born into whatever family we were born in whatever country, at whatever time, whatever decade. And we were raised according to the culture of that family, the culture of that city, the culture of that church, the culture of that environment, okay? And so whatever was the way in that environment, we absorbed. And this is relevant for, we absorbed it, okay? And this is relevant for everybody. And so for many of us, our truths have been intercepted by other people's stories and agendas and histories and expectations of us. So then we get to a certain point in our lives and things are not working. The flow is not there. We're confused. We feel like we're stuck. We don't know who we are. We're frustrated. We fall into depression. We start to eat too much, drink too much, engage in activities that aren't in line with our souls. And though we may not be able to identify things, we know that something is off. And so my goal here is to be able to speak to some truth in you that you're able to say yes to going in the direction that you need to go to. Because the point might not be for you to be with me. The point might be for you to awaken something within you and then go take some action that you've been delaying on. Or maybe have some conversation with somebody. Or just take some direction that maybe you didn't know or couldn't see or was afraid to take at some point. So I'm going to share with you, and if it makes sense for you and I to be in a relationship with one another, you will know. Women contact me. I actually shared, I did a screenshot of an email that I got from a woman, and basically her email is a version of what emails look like that come to me, whether they be on Facebook or in my email inbox, from women who read something that I wrote, who saw me speak somewhere, who maybe was a part of something like this, some training that I was doing, and said, that is the woman that I want to connect with. And when you feel that, you will know, and then you will have the opportunity to be in touch with me, and then we'll see if it's a good fit for us to work together over an extended period of time. So that's my goal here for today. And the reason why I even do this work, I looked at the registration list for the people who signed up to be here today, and there were about 60% of the people who signed up I already know in some kind of a way, whether we've worked together, we've talked before, they've been on my list, we're Facebook friends or something like that. And so for those of you who don't know me, I have a history of sexual abuse, okay? I was sexually abused as a 5-year-old girl, and that was like normal to me. My mom even told me when she asked me about it some months later that I just answered her like, oh, like that guy did, right? Like this was a normal thing. And over time, me not having that addressed, because there was never any counseling, my mom unaware of what to do other than going to the authorities, there was no kind of healing or real attention given to it. And so as I grew older and I started to get exposed to sex, the trauma from that experience really intercepted my ability to have a healthy relationship with my body, with sex, with men. And so I became this angry person. I became this person who could not speak up for myself when I needed to, when I wanted people to do things my way or agree with me, I would use violence or hostility or mean ways to get things done. When I would engage in sex with men, I wouldn't ask for what I wanted. I was just a body there, And I hear clients, adult women who are the way I was having sex as a teenager, and they're an adult now doing it. So I was just, just a body there, and I would never speak up. I didn't even think about sex as a pleasurable thing. I just thought about it as a thing that women do. And so this was my experience sexually, but then even beyond the sex, it just showed up in ways that I was not able to communicate as a person, as a woman, as a female. I was not able to really come from a place of knowingness. I was not able to be myself. Even girlfriends who I had around where I felt like the treatment was not good, I would still put up with it because it's like, I don't know how to do this thing, this relationship thing. I don't know how to speak for myself. And at the time, I didn't think about it in this way. I'm able to speak about it in this way now in hindsight. But it really just showed up in this way where I was just obstructed. And so as I grew older and I became an adult, I got married young, and then I wanted to grow up. And obviously I have a lot of stories, like a lot of people have a lot of stories around how I got here and what happened. But, I went through the marriage thing and was really like, who am I? I had been doing work. I started doing this work at 14, but this is lifelong work. And I was married to a man who was not available to be a part, not consciously available to be in this journey with me of healing. So I divorced at 26 and really went on this deeper, more like I'm a grown woman now. You know, I really wanted to leave the marriage to know who I was and really discover that. So I left California and moved to Texas. And this was like the beginning for me. The beginning of adulthood, you know, moving away, going out into the world, having to deal with circumstances and not having my husband to lean on or my mother to lean on or some friend to lean on. You know, because when I moved to Houston, I didn't know anybody. You know, this is absolutely crazy. And so this is why I do this work, because, you know, I started in the transformation space in 2011, unaware that it was the transformation space. I just knew I wanted to help myself and I wanted to help other people. And as I started to work with women, I just started to notice a common thing, one, the sexual abuse thing. And this was me not even thinking about actually working specifically with women in sexual abuse. And I would just find that whenever a woman was dealing with speaking up or doing a video or having conversations with her clients or talking with men or flirting or being confident in the workplace, it always came back to some kind of trauma, some kind of story, some kind of lock or cage that she had around her identity or her body or who she thought that she was, that really got in the way of her ability to interact with people. And I was able to see myself in these women and recognize that there were these common elements that got in the way of a woman being a full person. You know, this ability to speak up, this knowing who you are, like, who am I, right? And so when I would listen to it, when I got into business coaching and I would deal with a client who was having an issue with talking about money, it was never about the money. It always came back to some kind of worthiness issue. It always came back to some issue of, do I deserve it? You know, who am I to ask for this? Or when I was talking with a woman who wanted to do a video or wanted to do a speaking event or do something that required her to stand up and represent herself and be represent herself in a superior, meaningful, respectful way, there was always this missing link, and there was so much drama in between who she really was and who she was telling herself was. And so I do this work because I'm someone who has been this woman who has been removed from herself, who has been just really hurt deeply and not knowing how to help myself, and being pulled enough and being in pain enough to latch on to something to get to the next step, and figuring out along the way, having help along the way, because I have had therapists and counselors who have done their part, but there have been other ways where I've had to create ways of helping myself because no one got me. You know, I was always the weird one. Even as a teenager, guys would be like, you're crazy, and people would be like, you're weird, and I'm just like, whatever, you know, you just don't get me. So I'm going to go into the content here in a little while. One thing I want to mention is that this is me, Laura, and I have one of my clients here, Pilar. First time, I don't know if it's their first time, but it's my first time doing one in like 2 years. And so what I want to do is I want to organize some tech stuff here, and just hold on with me for a minute. Pilar, you know what to do to take care of yourself, and we'll take care of you when it's time for you to reveal your voice to us. And I'm going to bring up some notes that I have here as well. So what I want to do now, I think I'm going to go into the content now. I'm looking at my notes to see if I missed anything. Yeah, I have that. So I want to go into the content now. So there were 4 points here that I want to get across. And those 4 points are, first, the one thing you can start doing today to have more pleasurable and fulfilling sex, and you don't need a partner to do it. I'm going to save that for the end. Number 2 is learn the emotional technique I created and used to heal my sex shame. And I mentioned that no therapist or counselor was ever able to help me with this. Number 3 is how to get out of your head and get into the fullness and glory of your entire body and soul, so you can surrender and receive all that men are so eager to bestow upon you. And number 4 is how to identify your signature gifts inside the scars that your sexual trauma have left on you. And this is really valuable if you're an entrepreneur or a service provider, because in the transformation space, you're a healer, a counselor, a therapist, a coach, you know, working with the interior people if you're that kind of service provider. because there are there are scars that were left on you based on what your story is that speak to other people who have experienced the same kind of trauma. And so when you can identify the scar and the consequence of the scar, okay, and I'll get more into this later, then you're able to speak the language of the consequence, because that also speaks to your ideal clients, okay? Or people who just get it. They just hear you speak and they're just like, you know, that kind of thing is what I'm talking about. So let me go up here. And I'm going to have to go back and forth to my notes because I have certain things here that I really want to get across that I don't want to miss, so I have it here in my notes section. So first, what I want to say is, this is the first thing I want to start with. Oh, one thing that I missed that we're going to cover is to discover how to not let your sex shame keep you out of your true voice, your power, and the quality of sex and intimacy you crave. Okay, so now let me say something, and this is like foundational to today's training. It's really, really important because, you know, I work privately with clients. That's a primary way that I work with clients. And what happens is we start with our very first session, and we typically start with a story assignment because it's really important for us to look at what is the story, right? And we look at things that you missed, things that you forgot about, and you're like, I forgot, because that's what happens. A lot of this trauma requires forgetting a lot just to get along in life, even if it's heavy and burdensome. And so we'll start in this beginning. We'll start with an assignment, and there's so much invisible material inside of the soul of a human being. There's what you know that you can articulate to me and to other people, and you can speak it. You can say, yeah, I'm upset because this, you know, I can't get love from my man, I can't orgasm, I'm in my head, like you can talk, right? But when you start getting into the interior of your whole experience of sex and shame, everything else that you didn't even know was there starts to come to the surface. And this is why when I told the story about the worst part of this whole harboring shame thing is that I didn't even know the extent to which I was affected by the shame. It's what they call, like, you don't know what you don't know. It's like that. So it's like I would feel this kind of like this, it was like angst, and it was like wanting to move and feeling helpless, all this going on, but it's hard to puncture when I'm trying to think about it, when I'm just trying to think about it. And this is why it's so important to get into the work and to start to engage in experiences that you would avoid. And I'm going to get into this more later with one of the points, because I talk about following the body and not the mind, because the mind, man, it does some serious trickery, and how to start using the mind to support the healing that you want. And that's some really high level stuff right there, because it's not child's play. This is what I call grown woman work. So the foundational piece that I want to share is this. This is lifelong work. I want to emphasize that. This work of healing sex shame, of destroying the consequence of trauma, destroying the consequence of sex shame, and then rebuilding your internal landscape, meaning how you think about yourself, how you interpret emotions, right? Because the emotions are affecting how you're doing things, how you're deciding. So when you start to, this is really high level work, and so if this is unusual, if this sounds weird to you, good. It's new information. It's the right information. On my journey of healing my own sex shame, it's like, even like the last year, there's been so much that 2 years ago I would have not thought that this was here and available and possible. And so I want you to know that this is lifelong work. Like, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. Yes, you will improve. There will be mistakes that you made that you continue to make that you won't do anymore. Then you'll start making a new mistake, and then you'll resolve that. And what you're doing is you're learning how to strengthen your internal tools so that the trauma doesn't use you, so that it doesn't overpower you, so that you can disrupt the patterns that you currently have. Like, I have a client who, I remember I gave her this homework assignment. It was about surrender. Like surrender is a big part of healing in general, not even just healing sex shame, but healing in general. But when we bring surrender into the bedroom, man, it's just like, the body shakes because we're talking about a whole new level of truth. So I sent this client to go and I told her to schedule it. Like schedule a session with your man. There has to be a conversation in advance. He has to know what's going on, and let him know that you guys are going to have a sex session that's specifically for you. No need to reciprocate. Whatever it is that you guys have done in the past, it doesn't matter. This session is just for you. And this woman freaked the fuck out. Like, she did not want to freaking do this. And this is what I mean by the pattern. And part of the reason why she worked with me is because she realized that she would always end up in her sexual relationships with men that they would always get what they wanted, but she would never get what she wanted. And she noticed that this would happen with guy after guy after guy. And so the work, this lifelong work, is to disrupt these patterns that keep you in whatever your story is, because we all got them. Like, you, believe me, you ain't alone, baby, okay? And if you've been to the blog, the healsexshame.com blog, you've seen stories of ways I have intentionally engaged in activities that are in opposition with the mind, right? Because the mind will tell you to do the same thing you've been doing, and you'll create the story to justify it. And then you have to do something that's like it shocks the pattern. So there was actually one blog article I wrote. It was a widely spread, well-read. People really dug it and read it and shared it. It was called Fucking the Wrong Guy. It was a story around where I intentionally fucked a guy who I would never fuck because of the stories that I would tell myself around what a guy has to be, what he has to look like, what he has to do, that was keeping me away from connection. Because even if I would feel like some kind of heart connection or some kind of attraction to a man, if he didn't fit certain criteria, I would block it. So then it would intercept my ability to have connection with people. Like, what the fuck is that about, right? That doesn't work, right? That's a great way to keep yourself in one territory with one kind of guy, dating the same kind of guy all the time. And though that wasn't like a huge thing, I could see where it was having this subtle, it was a subtle thing that was affecting me in this really profound way. So I went and had sex with this guy who I would never have sex with. And not only was the sex good, but it's like it broke the pattern, and it helped me to start to really look at this way of how I tell myself how things have to be a certain way to keep myself out of connection, to keep myself out of having what it is that I really want. So I invested that time to say that because this is lifelong work. This is not come to Naima's Google Hangout, learn these 4 strategies, and boom, right? I mean, great, if you have some kind of profound 180-degree awakening in a 1-hour Google Hangout, amen. Teach the rest of us how to process in that way. But for the overwhelming majority of us, 99.9% of us, it is lifelong work. So that's that. Now, let's start with discover how to not let your sex shame keep you out of your true voice, your power, and the quality of sex and intimacy you crave. So first, I want to share about what sex used to be like for me. And I want to share specifically about this guy who comes to mind because I remember, gosh, it hurts to think about that today. So first of all, his dick was huge, and I was new to having sex. I was a teenager. His dick was huge, so I'm hurting because my vagina cannot adjust to the largeness of his dick. So I'm hurting, first of all, but I don't say anything because I don't have a voice. I don't know how to speak, right, about this kind of sex thing. And so I remember I'm on top of him, and I'm trying so hard to perform because I see that he is like really into this. And I'm trying to perform, I'm trying to be into it, and eventually I fall over because I'm like up on top of him. Eventually I fall over because I'm just in so much pain. And I still keep going. Like, I never tell him that I'm in pain. And then so I told some lie or something for us to stop. And so I remember I was cold because we weren't under the blankets. I was cold, and I wanted to get under the blankets. And I was terrified to say I was cold so we could get under the blankets. Like, this is what sex was like. And he's not the only guy. I just share him because it stands out in my mind as like this huge memory of what sex used to be like for me. And there were different versions of that with different men, where I would be there. Um, I remember this other guy. I won't say his name. I almost said it. I'm going to protect his anonymity. You never know. These technology stuff. You never know who's watching. But I remember we were having sex. We were at his friend's house, and I was terrified. Like I was terrified of, am I doing this right? Does he really like me, or is this just a sex thing? Just all in my head around who I was and what I was doing and how I'm presenting myself. And I'm traumatized, right? Because I'm carrying this abuse, but I don't even know. This is how naive I was. This is what sexual trauma looks like. And so I'm in my head, I'm thinking, and right, it's like I'm looking at myself interact with this guy. It's the most hilarious thing. And he's rubbing my leg, and he says to me, "Why are you so hard?" And I remember it was like a snap, just like that. That, okay, so it's not just me. I am locked here. I am confused and worried here. And he's noticing. He's picking up on this because he was rubbing my leg and he felt how hard I was. And my leg was hard because I was tight, like my muscles were tight, like I was tense, right? And I was just really terrified of the experience, period. I was terrified of who I was. I was terrified of the experience, but I'm still going through the motions. And when I deal with private clients now, this is still very much what they're experiencing at 30, 40, 50 years old. Where they're there, his dick is in her pussy, they're going through the motions, but she's waiting for it to be over, or she's wondering, what does she look like? She's, looking at herself have sex. I mean, to me, that is so hilarious, the vision of that. Ah, there we are. All right. So I'm not sure was the last thing you guys heard me say. I just saw that my screen went blank. And Pilar, can you hear me and see me?
I can right now.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, yeah, you can just stay there. So I was talking about. Let me bring my notes back up. I have a ton of notes here. Emotional promiscuity. Okay. So anyway, so this emotional promiscuity thing, it really allowed me to start to engage with men outside of the bedroom while still addressing the emotional impact that being in relationship with men was having on me. Because with sex shame, when there's a story I was mentioning, I'm not sure if you guys heard before we got cut off, but there were stories that I had in my idea about what my role was with men and what my position was and who I was and all that, and then who their role was and who their position was that got in the way of me really being able to connect with them in ways that were healthy and harmonious and felt good. So when I started engaging in emotional promiscuity, this is the technique, emotional promiscuity, is that I would start to engage in conversation with men and start to have relationships with men with no sex, where I was just getting to know them, they were getting to know me. And like if they tried to make the moves, then I would reject the sex unless I wanted to have the sex, right? But the goal was to be able to track emotions that were triggered within me so that I could really break it, so I could notice it, so I could start to understand, okay, where am I being hit? What's happening in this relationship that's hitting this part of me that thinks that I'm supposed to be something, or, you know, having this identity. Pilar, can you mute yourself, please?
Sorry?
So, we need to mute you because I can hear your, hold on. Let me go in here and do this.
I did it.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Okay. So, all right. So that was one technique that I use for emotional technique I use for healing my sex shame. The second one is engaging in behavior, and I started to speak to this earlier, engaging in behavior that's in opposition with your mind but is desired by the body, okay? I want to make sure you guys can see me because it keeps looking like, okay, we're good, okay. So what happens with sex shame is that there's stories that are on top of the consequence of the trauma. And so everybody has their own stories. You know, my body, I'm fat. You know, he doesn't like me. He only wants me for sex. I'm not good enough. How do I smell? How do I look? You know, all the stories about who you are and who you're not. I'm not deserving. I'm pathetic. I'm terrible. I'm ugly, right? We all have the story. And so what happens is when we have these stories, hold on one second. We use those stories to justify why we don't allow things to happen that we actually want to happen. So, for example, if I wanted a guy to go down on me, and I remember this guy in particular. I was a teenager. I had so much sex in my teen years. Oh wait, was I not already live? Yeah, I'm not sure how much of this you guys have seen because it keeps saying join, and I'm like, I'm already joined. So anyway, I'm going to repeat what I just said. So with sex shame, there's stories that we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm ugly. He doesn't like me. You know, how do I smell? Am I too fat? Right? All these stories. And so what happens is those stories justify why we won't allow what we want to happen, the sex, the connection, the intimacy, the whatever it is that we want. So we have the stories. So part of breaking that is to start to do things that are in direct opposition to what the mind would have you do. Now this is crazy because it feels like suicide. It does. Like, so I might put this in the high level category. This is like for somebody who is an intense being, you know, and I have a tendency to attract women who have this kind of intense way about them, and they've learned how to try to keep it down, but they end up burning because it's not true. They're intense people. And so when you do something like I did, having sex with that guy, I mentioned earlier I had sex with this guy who I would never have sex with, part of me was just, I did that so consciously because of like I've created this internal structure where I can do that now. I know how to do that, and I've done enough work for long enough to be able to do things that are risky without taking myself out of the game. And so you may or may not be able to do that depending on your level. And so I remember when I did this, before I did it, I remember we were in the car, we were driving down the street, and I was thinking to myself, I'm going to have sex with this guy. Oh my God, I'm going to have sex with this guy. Like, I would not have sex with this guy, but I'm going to, because I see what's happening. I see the story. I see the pattern trying to have its way here. Like, right? And this is what will happen for you as you start to do this work. And so I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to have sex with this guy. I'm going to do this on purpose, and I'm going to allow myself to be impacted by this experience and come out on the other side and see what comes of it. And so this is another technique that nobody is going to tell you, like, this is unorthodox. You know, a lot of my coaching is unorthodox. Nobody's going to tell you to do that. Like, okay, very few people are going to tell you to do that. But part of breaking these patterns that keep you in relationships that you don't like, because you're telling yourself some story around, you know, I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to find anybody else. You know, I had a client who literally said, you know, she was ashamed of stretch marks. She has stretch marks, and they were literally getting in the way of her being able to have orgasms. She has so much body shame. And so and I remember during one of our sessions, she said to me, well, he looks really good, you know, and I have these stretch marks and I've gained a little weight. So I'm just glad that we're together. I'm just glad that we get a chance to spend time. And it's like, do you see that? That is the example right there. So she has the story, right? She has the shame, the sex shame, and she has stories to support the shame. I have stretch marks, I'm older, and I've gained a little weight, okay? Therefore, that makes me less qualified, that makes me less desirable. And so how dare I actually ask for what I want? How dare I expect to experience pleasure? How dare I, how dare I, how dare I? So this is what sex shame looks like. And you may be experiencing this yourself. And so what you have to do is you have to do something that intentionally confronts that pattern, because the pattern is intense. Like, this woman, this is how her relationships are all the freaking time. So there's a pattern. So you have to look for patterns in your own life. You keep doing the same thing all the time that you don't like. So then you have to go look at, okay, so what is this thing that I keep doing, and do something that faces it head on, that confronts the pattern head on, okay? So that's another technique. Now, the third technique, and I have to keep going back to my notes because I got a lot going on here. The third technique, is to give yourself permission. Oh, God, don't tell me. I don't know if, like, when I... Pilar, I need to ask you a question real quick. Unmute yourself, because I'm wondering what's going on. Unmute yourself, please. Pilar? Okay. I'm wondering if, am I being cut out? Because I keep having to click this join button, and I'm wondering if there's parts you guys aren't hearing. Okay, so the third technique is, and I'm afraid to go back to my notes because then you guys, I might log out. The third technique is to allow yourself to act it out in the bedroom. Now, this is a technique that you're really going to have a supportive partner to do, because I'm going to share a story with you around what could be the consequence if you don't have a supportive partner. So I told you I was married. I got married young. I was married for 4.5 years. And I remember during my marriage, there was an evolution in my sexuality, and it was just doing it on its own. You know, this is what happens with a woman. She starts to wake up sexually, and she'll either lean into that or she'll keep herself in a no state, whether she won't allow things to happen, she says no, etc. And so I remember I wanted to start just really unleashing more in the bedroom. There was parts of me that were really waking up, that were really, you know, wanting to just have a whole new kind of sex and really get to know myself more deeply and richly in the bedroom. And I remember my husband and I, we were in the bed, we were naked. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, and I sat on his crotch. I remember my back was to him, and I sat on his crotch, in his crotch. And I remember I just let myself go there. And it's like this eroticism just came over me. And it was so, I remember like it was yesterday. And there was like, I was starting to unleash, and I remember my body just started to move differently, and I just started to feel myself differently. And his response was, he pushed me. And he was like, who have you been fucking? So this is what happens when you are in sexual relationship with someone who is not ready to be with you in the fullness of your sexuality. They will have some kind of freak out. They will tell you to stop. They will become afraid. They will say what my ex-husband said of, who have you been fucking? You know, something will happen that will re-traumatize you. And the last thing you need when you're working on healing sex shame and the trauma of that shame, having this person who you're in a vulnerable state with, naked, to blame you and shame you for unleashing. So it's really important that you have someone who supports you sexually, who is available, and who is happy to be with you as you're unfolding sexually in the bedroom, okay? So that's the third technique, okay? And I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, dang, it's a lot of copy here. And let me look, I think Pilar may have texted me to tell me something. Hold on, let me check this. Oh, no, that's not her. Okay. Somebody else just texted me. I thought that was Pilar. So I'm going to turn this off. Pilar, if you can hear me, could you please unmute yourself? I want to know if when I go to my notes, it's taking me out and people can't hear me, because I don't want people to miss the content here. So if you can hear me, unmute yourself. Okay, good. Now my question is, when I go look at my notes, am I leaving? Like, can you hear me and see me even when I go look at my notes, or am I? Yep. Can you consistently hear me?
Are you getting up and walking away?
No. So
no,
here, I'm going to go look at my
time.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go to my notes now. Okay, now I'm looking at my notes. Can you hear me and see me?
Yep, I can.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Okay. All right, so those are the 3 emotional techniques that I used and I created myself and used to heal my sex shame, all right? And they're unorthodox, but they work, all right? And if you're in the infancy stages of healing sex shame, I deeply encourage you to get some help around this, because if you're with somebody or you don't have the mental structure up here, the egoic structure, then it's like a woman who told me who was going to go do it by herself. It's like telling a 5-year-old who just came and told you that they got sexually abused and you telling them to go figure it out by themselves. It's like that. Like, you don't want to do that. All right, now, how to get out of your head and get into the fullness and glory of your entire body and soul so you can start. I love this so much. Like, I feel like I want to be naked and teach this section because it's so potent, okay? So when I talk about getting out of your head, like, this is classic. I did it. Like, I did it for years where I'm, how do I look? I told you I was terrified. How do I smell? Am I doing it right? Does he like me? Does he just want this for sex? Looking at myself, have sex, like, okay. And this is how most of my clients are having sex right now, right? These women are 40 and 50 years old still having sex like this. And this is heartbreaking. Like, unless you're having kids, why else are you having sex? Unless your goal is to reproduce, why else are you having sex? You're just doing it just to do it, just to keep him quiet, just to make it through the night? Or do you want to have the nourishment that comes from orgasm? Do you want to soften in your body so that you can experience, like, there's the pleasure and then there's the, oh, it's like the washing over. What I call medicinal sex, there's a washing over, there's a renewing. There's seeing yourself in a whole new light that comes when you're having medicinal sex. There's, forgiveness in medicinal sex. So when I talk about getting out of your head and getting into the fullness and glory of your entire body and soul. I want to emphasize that this is a lifelong practice, okay? There's people over there, so I'm just looking at it. So I want to share a story of what it looks like and what it can be like in awakening your man's manhood when you start to learn how to surrender. So I have a lover. He's just such a great lover. He's such a great lover. Oh, and we were making love. This was last year. This was like maybe 5 months ago. We were making love. And this is a lifelong journey. So I'm sharing this with you, but I too am still on my journey. Like, it's lifelong. And we're making love. And when I say making love, I mean from start to finish, even before we get to the bedroom, okay? And I love getting my pussy licked. Love it. Like, it's my thing now. Well, it's been my thing actually since I was a teenager. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's required. And he was sharing with me how, before I tell you, let me tell you, he's licking my pussy, and it's at a place now where I can get into such a surrender state where I can communicate without words. And this is what's possible for you when you really learn how to surrender, where your body will start to communicate language that you don't need, where you don't need to ask for things, you don't need to say things. Like when you're in the infancy stages of learning how to surrender, you are, having to ask for things. You have to consciously become aware of sensation and desire, and you have to articulate it. Like, there's a real order of things. When you start to become masterful at this, you'll be able to communicate without saying a damn thing. This is how powerful the surrender thing is. And this is why it's so important that you get out of your head and get into your body. And so I'm laying there, and he's like hitting areas without me even having, he's like, boom, he's hitting, he's licking this area, licking that, right? And I'm coming, and then I come somewhere, and then I come somewhere, and I let it happen. And I have to talk my way through staying in there because the intensity of it, I've already come like 2 times already. And I have to literally breathe, and I'm actually starting to go into one of the other points for later. And I literally have to breathe my way through staying there because it becomes like my entire body becomes flooded with orgasm, like flooded, and I'm just overwhelmed. But I can, in order to deepen my capacity to take in this pleasure, I'm breathing, and I'm like, stay with it, 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 stay with it. Calm down, relax, stay with it. And he's between my legs the whole time while I'm like talking myself through deepening. And it's like I'm deepening my capacity. Like, you learn how to take in orgasm, and then there's a next layer. This is what I mean by it's lifetime. It's the next layer, it's the next layer, then the next layer. So I'm deepening, and he's a part of this process for me. And he tells me the next day, this is the first time he's ever said this to me. He said, I love how you just lay there and you just enjoy it, and you just really just let it happen. And this is what surrender looks like. This is what is possible for you. I had a woman, I'm all hot and sweaty just thinking about that and talking through it. But this woman contacted me a couple weeks ago who told me that her man is eager to please her. They enjoy it. He enjoys giving her oral. But whenever she's about to orgasm, she stops it. Like right before she's about to orgasm, she stops it. And so this is what I mean by being in your head. You see what I mean? Like, could you imagine, like, you're about to come and then you stop it from happening? Can you imagine? Like, so this is the consequence of trauma and sex shame, is that we don't allow the pleasure, we don't allow the goodness, we don't allow it to happen. And so I wanted to share that story with you to give you an example of what it looks like to get out of your head and to get into the fullness and glory of your entire body and soul, so you can surrender and receive all that men are eager to bestow upon you. Okay, so this is how you start to do this. Now let's get into the how for this. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, oh my God, I can easily add another hour to this, but I won't, because we have to be mindful of time. So for starters, and this is a huge, big deal, this is imperative, it's not negotiable, is you have to increase your attention on yourself. So touch, sensation, feelings, and subtleties. You have to start paying paying very close attention to yourself. Part of the consequence of sex shame is denying one's desires, denying one's feelings, desire, what sensations, even subtle things. When a person is deeply impacted by sex shame, there's a subtlety to the way we dismiss ourselves. Kind of like we'll talk about an issue that we're having, we'll be like, well, whatever. Or we'll want something and we'll be like, well, I'm a good person, so I'll wait. Or you'll be like, well, it's been this way for a while, maybe it'll turn around. Well, I don't know. Well, and just kind of get into this dismissive state. Like that's the consequence of this whole sex shame thing. And in order for you to start to practice the surrender thing, and I mean before the physical act of it, where your whole body goes into this kind of involuntary state, is that you have to start paying very close attention to feelings that you have in relation to your body, in relation to sex, in relation to your identity, and to relation to how you're relating to men inside the bedroom, outside the bedroom. You have to start paying close attention and then tracking how you're feeling. This is what I mean by the work. It's not just, a noticing of something. It's not just a writing of something. It's an actual tracking of how you're feeling when this gets triggered, when that happens, et cetera, et cetera. And this is some of the things that I have my clients do. The second thing is you have to start, part of what happens, the consequence of sex shame is that we will stop ourselves. Like one thing, the woman, I told you the woman, she stops herself from orgasming. There's so many other ways that we stop ourselves. We stop ourselves from talking. We stop ourselves from being too expressive. We stop ourselves from admitting what's true because we're afraid we'll lose it, or if I go too far, what will happen? Will he like me? Will I die? Like that's the extreme case. Will I die? Oh my God. And then I put in parentheses here that you have to have structured containers so you can let go without worry of going too far. And going too far is subjective because I'm an ambassador. I would say go too far, because it's like you learn so much about who you are when you go too far, when you push it. And you get to experience what it's like to be on that side, and then you get to recalibrate and come back to whoever it is that you want to be. And then the third point that I want to, and I'm going to speed up here because of time. The third point that I want to make here about surrender is that you have to bring your respect and necessity for your breath to the same level of respect and necessity that you have for food. That's where we don't have to ask for it, we don't have to push a button, we don't have to work for it, we take it for granted. Breathing is one of the most healing things that you can do. I told you earlier about how, well, I'm in the middle of this orgasm and I've already came 2 times, and I'm like, the rushing over my body is so intense that part of me is like wanting to check out, and another part of me is like really in the deep of it, and I have to breathe consciously, stick with it, to keep myself in my body. Because what happens is there's a confrontation of the trauma. The immediate reaction is to get away. It's to run, stop, no, stop, stop, stop. That's the reaction. But in order for you to get through it and stick with it, you have to breathe your way through it. You have to, sometimes it's not just choice. Like, yes, you are choosing, but you need the whole biology of you and the mind of you to work in harmony. And breath helps you to do that. So I need you to start taking the importance of your breath to the same kind of necessity and respect as you do for food. Because like you will spend your last dollar on food because you need it. So I need you to start to respect your breath, the same thing. All right, so we're going to go on to how to identify your signature gifts inside your scars. This is so freaking fabulous. So I told you I was sexually abused as a child, okay? And one of the consequences of that is that I became an angry teenager. I was a teenager. I didn't know what to do with all of this shame that I had and all of this not feeling good. And then hormones and puberty hit, peer pressure hit, and it just, that's an intense elixir for a young person who's dealing with shame and trauma, okay? So I became this person who was angry, person who was hostile, and so I learned what it looks like when a person is like the different stages of anger, because I'm someone who is deep in anger. So that I get clients who come to me who deal with anger intensely. I have a client right now, the first thing that she said is one of her biggest things. Before she even enrolled with me officially, she was like, my anger. This anger thing that I have. And so this is how you start to identify it. First, you have to notice what recurring sayings or events happen for you. So for example, my voice. I already talked to you about the anger thing, but my voice is one thing. Something that people have always been drawn to, always, is my voice. People ask if I'm in radio or if I sing, and yeah, so that's one thing. That's a recurring thing. And I just use this as an example for you to see if there's something that happens for you all the time. Number two is you notice that what you just can't seem to change or get into, no matter how much work you do or convincing yourself you try to do. For example, for me, I cannot spend too much time in environments with people who are unconscious, okay? So you have to notice what is it that you cannot seem to change no matter what, because that is like really at a deep part of you, okay? And I know a lot of times people want to make it seem like, well, you need to adjust so you can do this. You need to adjust to keep the peace. You need to, like, there's a nuanced part of this learning how to adjust and also being able, and this is what I mean by you got to do the work, because it's hard to identify when you're at a surface layer of trying to figure this out. It's a very amateur level. When you really get into the thick of this work, you start to be able to notice subtleties and the nuances of how much of this is true to me and how much of this can actually be modified so that this works, whatever the circumstance is. So that's number two, noticing what you just can't seem to change no matter what. Number three is notice what you become bored with and see if there's a thread in the list of things that you become bored with. So if you notice that you're bored with, and I keep coming back to the entrepreneurial space because it's one area where I've just learned so much about myself, where bored with doing a newsletter, bored with going about business and promotion as usual, but really noticing what is making me excited. What do I feel like I want to do? Okay, so this is a nuanced thing, and we could really spend more time with that. But for time, we have to move on now. And then, I feel like there's something. Okay, and here's the last thing before I bring on Pilar. Pilar is a client that I'm currently working with who I really feel like has a significant story to share. So the number one thing you can do, actually I'm going to save this for after Pilar. The number one thing you can start doing today to have more pleasurable and fulfilling sex that you don't need a partner for, I'm going to save that for after Pilar. So my darling Pilar, we're going to bring you on now. So if you will unmute yourself and bring your camera on, it is now your time. And let me introduce you officially. Pilar and I was introduced through someone, and Pilar, I'll let you share that. And we had a conversation, and I knew that this was an intense woman. I told you I attract a lot of women who are just really intense in their energy, intense in how they live life, and I just knew that Pilar was that woman. And we've been working together for 7 months now, and it has been such a freaking journey, and I'm just so delighted to be a part of it. And I'll let Pilar share with you because there's nothing like hearing from the horse's mouth. But Pilar, go ahead and share with us. Specifically, what I would like for you to share with our listeners is what your sexual history was like before you and I even met. What was that like? And then tell us what it's been like for you as of recently, before we met recently, and then what it's been like with us working together. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So start with what your history has been like, and then go into what it's been like with us working together.
So my history, I think it's a lot of what you were describing when you were
First,
talking.
Tell us your name.
Oh, okay. Pilar. I'm Pilar. Hello. Am I looking right
Hi, Pilar.
directly enough for you?
Just look at the camera. Just look at the camera. You're good.
Okay. My name is Pilar, and I am 53 years old, and I have had a pretty, I don't know.
We can't see you. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
You can't see me? Okay.
I see you now. Go ahead.
You can hear me all right? Because I feel like I'm yelling, like talking loud. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. What was the question? Get me back to the question.
Your sexual history, like what got you to even get to the place of wanting to discover who you are sexually?
yeah, I discovered that for a long time, I don't think I was interested in sex at all. And I just kind of went along with it. Then I was married for 17 years. And I was into it at first, and I realized that I actually did have a pretty strong libido, but it's a combination of things, of not knowing what to do, of not feeling comfortable in the space, not definitely a lot of issues around self-worth and physical beauty, or what I was made to believe was beautiful, and so I noticed over time. I guess I didn't know I had a problem until after my marriage ended, and I realized when my marriage ended that was really unclear about who I was sexually. I didn't know if I was bi or gay or straight, or I didn't really know where I stood in any of it. And then had some couple little flings here and there as a single person. And then I got into a relationship that I've been into a relationship for the past 4 years. And it was through this relationship that I realized that I had some major blocks that were not allowing me to get, okay, first order of event was not being able to have an orgasm with my partner while having intercourse. Or, yeah. And it began with that, and then other things started to come in. And what I noticed was a pattern of me placing the blame on my partner for them not giving me what I need, and then realizing that I just had no idea how to ask for what I need, for what I wanted. And going further back, I think I was just completely been out of touch with myself as a sexual being. I've had moments where it was really clear, but when involving another person, that's where I would have trouble. So I was perfectly comfortable masturbating or looking at porn or, having alone time sex, but when it involved another person, that's when it became problematic for me. And I think it's still like that. So at some point, I noticed that it was serious and that it wasn't my partner. He had his stuff, but a lot of the blocks I was feeling were definitely coming from me, and I was just so out of touch with it and so removed from it and so far away from it that I just couldn't even I didn't even know where to start. So I knew I had questions about sex, and I would bring it to my therapist, traditional talk therapy, psychotherapy, and no one really, I think they were just as uncomfortable with it. It was not a specialty for them, and there's only so much they could do, and there was only so much people could do for me. So I began searching further, and when I was talking to Kara Joy, who I can't explain what she does exactly, but it does involve some sex coaching. It has to do with finding your true inner bliss, and that is one avenue to get there. So she mentioned Naima as a place to begin, and at first I was extremely turned off by Naima's approach because she's really strong and almost a little pushy about it, and although I'm attracted to strength and was not turned off by her strength, I think what happened in retrospect is that I knew I was going to get to the truth with Naima. I knew that Naima was going to bring me to what I was avoiding, what I was trying not to see. And I think that I knew that right off the bat, and so I resisted, and I tried to find a way not to work with her. And between the two of us, and both of us being persistent, we're here now, and we've been working for a while. And I have trouble with Naima's exercises because I am still not at the point where I can even actualize. We're still in the stage of trying to sort through all the stuff, to get to the bottom of the core of what's blocking, and so I feel that we're on the course. I think that Naima is going to help me get there, and I don't know. Yeah, you can hear me all right?
You were going in and out on my end, but I hear you now though. So go ahead, keep going. You're doing great, by the way.
Anything else? Did I answer the history? I kind of connected it all
You
together.
did. You did connect it all. And then, so what's it been like with us working together? I mean, I heard you say that it's been a challenge for you to do the exercises. What progress have you made?
I think because Naima, you're so perceptive in terms of what the blockades are. I think like a simple thing like hold the gaze, like having trouble if someone's looking at me and objectifying me, if a man is objectifying me and looking at me, that I tend to turn away. And, Naima and I have gone through the history of why that is so. I've had a lot of huge epiphanies while working with Naima, and but okay, I'm off track now. So some of the exercises really subtle, like holding someone's gaze that is objectifying you. If you're afraid of being objectified, you're afraid to be looked at, you're afraid to be seen, which is part of my issue. I want to be seen, but I don't. So when I'm looked at that way by my partner, I tend to look quickly and then turn away. So a simple exercise that Naima had me doing, which was to hold the gaze and keep it as long as just a few seconds beyond my comfort level. And that simple exercise has brought many epiphanies. That's one example.
Nice. That's great. I'm so enjoying looking at you. Okay, that's great, darling. Is there
It's not
anything else that
coming
you
in
want to
well.
share? Because what, me?
Yeah, it's all disjointed.
I'm
It's like stopping and starting.
so much for sharing that. And I want you to stay here with me because we're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes. So now I want to share with you the number one thing you can start doing today to start having more pleasurable and fulfilling sex, and you don't need your partner to do it. And I would guess that some of you already know what that is. Pilar, what do you think it is?
What we could do today? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to share it. I thought you were going to say it. The number one thing you can start doing today to start having more pleasurable and fulfilling sex that you don't even need a partner for is
Oh, right. I'm good at that.
masturbation.
I don't have a
And I'm
problem with
watching
that.
my volume because we got people over here.
Yeah.
But so that's the number one thing you can do. I started masturbating when I was 10 years old, and it's really got me into, like, I had already been looking at my vagina. Like, I started looking at my vagina when I was like 5 or 6 years old. When I started masturbating, man, it got me to a whole new level of just self-awareness, like looking at myself and like seeing myself as this beyond just a body, but like there's something more to me. And even though my 10-year-old mind couldn't really capture that, there was a deeper awareness that, wow, this is here. And so masturbation is a wonderful thing to get to know yourself, to get to start to touch yourself, not even just your clitoris, but just your whole body, and noticing what comes up for you as you touch your body. This is a deeply enriching, deeply powerful exercise that I have some of my clients do, so they can start to cultivate self-intimacy first. Because when you can cultivate intimacy with self, then you just bring that into the bedroom with your partner, and it's like, cake. So self-pleasuring, right? Touching your body, kissing your body, talking to your body, having a date with your body. This is profoundly powerful, and developing your intimacy with yourself and starting to have more sex, more powerful sex, opening up your body and your consciousness to be available for higher qualities of sex, because it's all deep and it's all internal. So if you would like to connect with me further, this is what will qualify you to be in contact with me for us to work together privately, because I work with certain kinds of women, and because of the nature of this work, it's really important that you respect these 3 qualifications and that you fit these qualifications. Number one is you must be a woman who is ready to do this work. And when I say do this work, I mean do the work of excavating the stories and the trauma and bringing forth the truth of who you really are. So this is a signature thing. Like there's certain exercises that I have all my clients do because it's foundational work. And then there are certain exercises that will only apply to you because it's your life, it's your story, and I see what will help you break through a certain pattern, okay? So the first requirement is that you have to be ready to do this work. Number two is you have to be committed to the course. When I say committed to the course, meaning when it's uncomfortable, when you want to resist, when you feel like, I don't want to do this, this is hard, that you still stay the course, because there's lots of disruption and confusion and despair on the journey to destroying these cages that have cages that the trauma have erected. And there's a whole process to creating the new internal castles that will allow you to live in wholeness and in truth. And so I like to say that to get to where you are, you've gone through a lot. So you have to imagine if you had to go through all this stuff to bring on the stories and to bring on the trauma, just imagine you have to unwind all of that. So this is what makes it so, chaotic, and, you can feel confused and just really just like, what is this? Who am I? And wanting to quit. And with your commitment and with me by your side, we can get through it. You will get through it without a doubt. Number three is women who are ready and willing to financially invest in themselves. Financial investment, it changes somebody from wanting to actually doing, okay? So those are the three requirements. One, you're a woman who's ready to do this work of excavating the stories and the trauma and bringing forth the truth of who you really are. Number two, you're a woman who's committed to the course, no matter how difficult it gets, because we will get to the other side. And I feel like I want to share this story, but for time, I won't share it here. But another time I will. And number three, you're a woman who's ready and willing to financially invest in themselves, okay? So I am Naima Singletary. If you want to be in contact with me to discuss the possibility of working privately together, you can email me at naima@billiondollarcourage.com. That's NAIMA @billiondollarcourage.com. And when you email me, I want you to put two things. One, why now is the time for you to start doing this work. And number two, why you believe I can help you, okay? So one, why now is the time for you to start doing this work. And number two, why you believe I can help you. So you can send me that email to naima@billiondollarcourage.com. Pilar, my love, you have done beautifully. I mean, you have shared, I've gotten a chance to learn more about you just in this little, 3-4 minutes that you shared. And I just love that you said yes to being a part of this.
Yeah,
I
and
know
I'm
the back
sorry
end
I'm a
story.
bit nervous. I was
I'm
nervous.
so proud of you.
I hope that I related what I was trying to relate, that I'm really happy doing my work with you, and I know that we're getting somewhere, and we've gotten somewhere. We've gotten very far so far, and I know there's still a lot more to do, and I'm glad that you're on the journey with me, and I know that you're going to help me get there, Naima. Thank you so much. And I totally advise anyone out there that is stuck in this place, Naima's your ticket. She's strong, beautiful, caring individual, and she's thinking about you, contemplating you, and that it's all heart, it's heart. So you can't find that too many places.
Lots of love, darling. Thank you so much, Pilar. Mwah. I will talk to you later. And to everyone else, so glad you were here. Lots of love, and I hope to connect with you if it makes sense. Take care. Bye-bye.